Section 3 of The Black Cat, Volume 6, Number 5, February 1901. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Black Cat, Volume 6, Number 5, February 1901. Section 3. The Unassimilated Miss Downing, by Edward Stratton Holloway. I do not know a better way of acquainting you with the preliminary facts than to plunge in and quote from the rapid, vigorous scrawl which Barbara Downing thrust into an envelope, adorning it with one carmine 2-cent stamp and one oblong blue special delivery. Dora, the conventions smothered me. Today, the unusual has... well, read this. I'm wondering if the protecting arms of convention will ever be around me again. Before night, I may be arrested for complicity in an act of treason. I don't know. As I say, I was simply stifled. I had to have some sort of lark. In all conscience, it seemed a mild enough one, but it was the only thing that offered just then. After tearing around all the afternoon shopping and spending about $300, I went to a mesmerist and reader of the stars, away over on Capitol Hill. It was dusk when I got there, and it was a lonely, forbidding sort of place. He was horrid, too, in his manner, and I wouldn't have it. So, I suppose he revenged himself in his own way. He predicted the most dreadful things. Of course I saw what he was doing, but everything was so uncanny that, if I had the creeps in the first place, before I got away, I was thoroughly frightened. Then there were 4 long blocks to walk to the car. Lonely doesn't describe it. It was along a high bank, overgrown with trees. I had in my hands a package for Mother, and my pocketbook. I was just trying to tuck this away out of sight when a man sprang out and grasped my hand. It was horrible. I sprang back, but it was no use. He had my things in a moment and had thrown me aside like a child. I suppose I must have screamed, for I heard running footsteps and then realized that a man this time, and not a villain, was driving the thief back with heavy blows of his walking stick. He beat him back finely and then handed me my things, for the thief had dropped them when he threw up his hands to protect himself. But suddenly there was the flash of a knife. The man who had come to my assistance reeled a moment, then fell heavily, his head striking on the curb. I reeled myself at the sight, and at my new danger, when I felt that someone else had come up, and that the thief was running. I looked around wildly. A big policeman, too, was laboring heavily along halfway down the block. I heard him call the fellow to stop, heard him fire, and then slipping quickly around the corner I ran with all my might to the cars. That was last night. It was nothing to what I have gone through this morning. The newspaper is black with flaring headlines, in type 2 inches high. That affair of mine is mixed up in the most hideous way with something dreadfully serious. All Washington is agog just now over this war threatening with Spain. I don't wonder. I've been one of the enthusiasts myself, have been one perfect burst of patriotism. Now think of this, from the paper, but in my own way. It seems that a few days ago, some important plans of forts were missed from their place at the War Department. A Mr. Sidney W. Scudamore, a brilliant young fellow he had the reputation of being, was in charge of that work, and suspicion fell upon him, especially as he seems to have known intimately a very beautiful young Spanish girl they think now was a spy. The affair was hushed up at once, and didn't become public property. But one of those newspaper men, in some way, heard of it. He said nothing, but shadowed Mr. Scudamore. The man who rescued me last night, and who was injured, was Sidney W. Scudamore. The man who came up afterward, just in time to see him hand me the package, was the reporter. I remember he tried to stop me, but he tripped over Mr. Scudamore and, as I said, I got away in the dusk down the other street. Mr. Scudamore was taken to the hospital unconscious. The paper says he is suffering from concussion of the brain. It may be weeks before he recovers. It may be a mercy if he never does, for the reporter at once saw the Secretary of War. They investigated, and found that more plans had just disappeared, those of the defenses of an important harbor. Now, remember, Mr. Scudamore handed a package to me. I, apparently, made off with it. You know how dark my complexion is. In short, I am taken for the Spanish spy. Horrors! Just think of it. Naturally, they took me to be the other woman, and not the beautiful and fashionable, I quote, Miss Barbara Downing. She and I must look greatly alike, for the reporter, of course, had an opportunity of seeing my face pretty plainly. I had to stop writing for a few minutes, for Mother came in. Poor conventional Mamma. What would she say if she imagined for one little moment the 10th part of this? I had to tell a fib, no, a staring lie, to account for my absence last evening. I simply could not face the storm of tears and distress that I knew would follow if she learned of my adventure. She would die of mortification and misery did she know of this new complication. And that complication is the worst of all. I know down in my heart that I ought to come forward and say that, at least in this instance, Mr. Scudamore is innocent. That little package which has raised such a storm, which lies there on the chiffonier, forgotten in all this turmoil, contains not plans of forbidding forts and defenses, but insertion. What creatures we women are! Here am I, laughing and crying and wringing my hands all at once, resolving to go immediately and vindicate Mr. Scudamore, and knowing way down inside of me that I never will. For I have been fighting it out by the hour. I cannot do it. My mother, my friends, the whole world about me, what would they think? My foolish adventure, a street brawl, mixed up with all sorts of people. Ah, the conventions have, you see, fixed their hold on me too. Stronger they are to us than anything God made, these ropes of our own twisting. Call it weakness, wickedness, anything you like. What it really is cold, ice-hearted selfishness. I might as well be honest about it. Americans do not worship their ancestors as they do in Japan. We Downings have always been a selfish people. We have all lived for ourselves. I have, my whole 19 years. So I have set my teeth hard. Destroy myself to save him, whom I have never before seen or heard of, and never again shall. And who does not know of my existence? No, I can't, and I won't. When Barbara made her resolution, she had made it deliberately, with a strong suspicion that she should not be able to forget what she had done. What she had not counted upon was that she would be filled with an insatiable curiosity as to the man her silence injured. The comment of the newspapers and the gossip of society but whetted her interest, for she found that he was a man of her own world, known to many of her friends, he and his sister, a charming girl, devotedly nursing him in his present illness. The verdict of society could hardly be called a divided one. There was too little general doubt as to the man's guilt for that, but the friends whom the two had made were so staunch in his defense, in the assertion of the impossibility of his crime, that, as the days went by, their fierce championship could not fail to make a certain impression. Government, however, had been relentless. Patriotism was, just then, too militant to be merciful. Scudamore was placed under surveillance, so that from the moment of his return to consciousness, his every movement might be known. Barbara scarcely understood herself. Grasping the situation thoroughly, recognizing that the man's position was pitiable, seeing her own duty, she did not for a moment debate the question of relenting. She could not herself determine whether there was in her a previously unexpected quality of steel, or whether her original deliberate decision had seared her. But a sin will serve as well as anything to awaken a soul. Barbara was restless, alert, possessed with a desire to taste the bitterness of her experience to the uttermost. She marveled at herself, but she understood now that she would never rest till she knew the man himself, saw with her own eyes the devastation she had wrought, found how he faced his disaster, probed the man's honor, and laid bare his heart. It was September, and the soft air was laden with repose and peace. The breeze from the Atlantic stirred the awnings fitfully. Violet Scudamore was looking out over the strip of beach and the plain of hazy blue beyond, but her eyes were unseeing. As fragile as the flower whose name she bore, her brightness was that of a bird. Even in quietude, she seemed always poised, ready for a movement or a burst into song. And yet she was a wounded bird. There was a pathetic droop to the graceful head with its crown of sunlit hair. Suddenly she turned. "Barbara!" She laid her hand on the other's knee. "What should we have done without you? With you the summer has been almost happy." Barbara bent her head low. "Don't. I am glad if our being together has been any help, but any help! You've been so cheerful, so steady. The life of the house, dear. When you consented to join fortunes with us and take this cottage, I pranced. I did. And you've been so wonderful." Barbara laughed. "You have. You seem instantly to understand Sid's feelings, that all should be the same as if nothing had happened. Never a slip, never a question. That is the way I'm sure Sidney wanted it, and you've helped him. He would always have been brave, but for hours at a time you even make him forget." "Hush, hush," said Barbara. "No, I will talk for once." And the perverse little beauty seemed likely to have her way. "If I had been here alone with him, he would never have weakened, but he would have eaten his heart out. I know how savage he was that people wouldn't believe. When the secretary interviewed him—" Barbara's eyes burned with interest now, though she strove to hide them. "Sidney wasn't particularly polite. He swore. You know I was with him," Violet went on. "But so was an officer. From the moment he came back to consciousness, no one, not even I, was allowed to communicate with him. It must have been a frightful blow to come to oneself and find such a condition of things. But do you know he seemed to realize that he must get better in order to understand, and instead of going off into the relapse I feared, he began to pick up immediately. Then one day the secretary himself came. He was gloomy and stern. Sid lay still and heard him through. His face was a mask. Even I couldn't read it. But what one could see, for the bandages grew whiter and whiter, and his eyes burned blacker and blacker. When the secretary finished, Sid said quietly, but in a voice that fairly bit, "Don't you know a man when you see him? Damn your suspicions! Damn you!" In a moment the secretary said, "Tell me the story, then." "There is little to tell," Sidney answered. Turned the corner, saw a fellow snatch from girl pocketbook, and a package. Let the fellow have it with my stick. He fell back. I picked up the things, handed them to the girl, saw something flash, woke up here. "And that is the story I am to tell?" the secretary asked. "You may tell precisely what you please. I'm telling you the truth." I thought Sid's eyes would scorch him. Then Sid said, "If you don't mind, I think I'll say good morning and go to sleep." And he turned over and shut his eyes. The secretary stood up. Then he said in a queer voice, "Mr. Scudamore." Sid turned back again. "Mr. Scudamore," he said, "I hope you will soon be well." And he held out his hand. Sid took it, and for the first time his lip quivered. "Thank you. I beg your pardon." "Mr. Scudamore," said he, "I beg yours." He went away, and the officer went with him. Sid could have gone back to the department weeks ago, and the secretary would have kept him there, despite all the clamor they could have raised, but he feels he can better find out who really took the papers in a way of his own. Do you know I am afraid," and Violet shrank and dropped her voice, "that if he ever does find that man, he'll kill him." The graceful head drooped again at the thought of further possible trouble. "Be brave, dear," and Barbara took the little hand in hers. "It will be all right yet." "I am so jumpy," and Violet gave a sad little laugh. "One moment hopeful and happy, and the next down, way down. Why can't I be as you are nowadays? So strong and even. You were not quite so at first. You never let Sidney know it, but I saw sometimes, when you thought I didn't, that you almost gave way. You were bearing up to help us, and you had some trouble of your own. I know it. I think you have it yet." Barbara was silent. Then she broke out. "Yes, and some day you will both know me as I am. I have tried to make you and Sidney see me as I see myself, but you won't. No, we won't." And the others smiled. "We know you better than you know yourself." Barbara started, opened her lips to speak, and bit them hard. In a moment she said, "It is useless to talk," and, sighing, turned wearily away. In a moment she returned and said, "I think I will take a long walk up the beach." Her steps were without animation, and Violet looked after her wonderingly. It was dusk when she returned. She saw Violet's white frock fluttering as she ran to meet her. "Oh, Barbara, Barbara," she gasped. "The girl has come forward at last. The secretary has had a letter from her, and she confirms everything Sidney said. I am so happy, so happy." "I am glad. She should have done it long ago," Barbara said soberly. "And Sidney doesn't yet know who it is. She sent a regular affidavit, sworn too, and it is all to be published over her signature on Saturday. But she asked the secretary to withhold her name until then. Barbara," she went on, "I think Sidney wanted to tell you himself. He asked for you at once, and seemed bitterly disappointed when he found out you weren't here." "Oh, don't! Don't!" said Barbara. Violet again looked at her in surprise, and then went on. "But he had to tramp down the beach to the station to get a necessary statement into the post tonight, and he asked me to tell you so you'd know at once. Why didn't she come forward before? I can't understand it." "No," said Barbara, "and when it is all told, it will probably be impossible to understand." And then Sidney came, with face illumined, and took her hands. Violet slipped away and left them together. Scudamore shook his head slowly. "I think you are right. I feel as if I myself shall never quite understand. But when I know her name, I shall see her. I am a just man, and I do not want to go through life believing what I am now forced to believe about that girl. When I came to myself and found out all that had happened, and all that had not happened, it seemed to me that nothing should have kept her back. I want to know her, to understand the truth, to know what were the palliating circumstances. Sidney, there were none. I was the girl." He recoiled from the blow. It had sunk home instantly. There was no question of the truth. The girl's misery was appalling. The months of agony had gone into her very life. She lay back, like a dead thing. But he could not touch her. He could not speak. This thing stood between them. He sank upon the step at her feet. He pleaded for pardon at his ignorant misjudgment of her, begged her to tell him why she had taken a course which compelled him, ignorantly, to such misjudgment. She only shook her head. With his utmost endeavor, his utmost patience, revolted at this new knowledge, and yet drawn by her lovableness, her newly manifested courage, her misery, did Sidney endeavor to get at the mystery of her own point of view. Her only reply was, "I had no excuse. I had no excuse." Her hands were twitching in her lap, and then he took them in his own. In a voice she did not recognize, he said, "For the love of God, Barbara, tell me. You see now what it means to me. I love you. I never knew how much till this came between us. You came into my life when it was emptied of everything, of ambition, of hope, of faith, and filled it. Tell me, dear heart, how I came to misjudge you so." "You did not misjudge me," she moaned. He buried his face in his hands and tried to think calmly. Then again he spoke. "But you have done everything now." She shook her head. "It is no use to excuse. I thought of no one except myself. I cared nothing how an unknown man might suffer. I met you out of curiosity." Again he drew back. She went on. "But you were so brave, so quiet, so strong. And then I wanted to prove you, to test your endurance of such trouble. Oh, I am hard, hard! Forgive me. And yet I cannot ask it. It was only when I met you, knew you, that I relented. Not that I was less selfish. It was only selfishness in another form. Only because... Yes, I will tell you all. Because..." She hid her face. "I loved you." He took her hands from her face and pressed his lips to them. Then he said, "Brush it all away. Forget it as utterly as I shall do. Can't you see that love has changed you, has made such things impossible for the future? Let the past go, and be only thankful that it has brought us together." "I cannot. I cannot. You feel now that you can forget, but in the future you cannot fail to remember. If any suspicion of me should arise, there would be the doubt. Always." "Never. You do not know me." "Oh, I know you would try. You think you would succeed. But then, too, don't you see that I cannot accept joy out of such sorrow to you?" "Do you forget the joy you would give me, too? Sweep all the rest away, dear. My God, if you could have seen into my own heart, all the anger, revolt, bitterness, hatred. Let it all go." But she said, "It must be self, still, pride, or what you may choose to call it. But I cannot, yet. I must redeem it all. I don't know how. I can't see my way. I can't see anything. Only that I must not. Now." Barbara smiled grimly. No one was more conscious than herself that, since she had walked these streets in the spring, she had become a new Barbara. She recognized that her present errand might be characterized as a desperate one, yet she did not falter. But yesterday she had had an encounter. A girl in black, wan of face, weary, yet of unmistakable beauty, and she had met face to face on this same street. It is a somewhat startling sensation to encounter one who in general type and appearance might well be taken for oneself. It becomes a bit gruesome when that person, as did this one, starts in evident recognition, with something approaching dread, then with averted face speeds on her way. This incident had caused Barbara some moments of intense thought, of reaching back through her consciousness, and then a sudden memory. The confusion of herself with another, in the newspaper report months before. It was an excited Barbara now, yet a coolly determined one. Not many minutes later, she sat in a detective's office. "I want you to find me a woman who looks greatly like myself," she said. "She seems to be in demand," came the reply. Barbara started. One of the Gleam reporters kept his eye on her for months after the first inkling of the disappearance of those government papers, and their own men have watched her closely enough, too. I don't think they ever learned anything. If you will be good enough to give me her address—" Barbara produced her purse, and now she was on her way thither. She found the neighborhood dismally unattractive. Well-soiled children romped noisily over the adjoining doorsteps. The girl herself answered Barbara's ring. If there was an instinctive start, it was well veiled by a mechanical, "Won't you come in?" The room was poorly furnished. A typewriter stood by the window. On the table straggled some written sheets. "Do you know who I am?" asked Barbara. Miss Downing is known by sight to many persons in Washington," was her reply. "I want you," said Barbara, "to tell me where those government plans are." The girl's eyes flashed, but her only reply was a weary gesture. "I know you can tell me," persisted Barbara. "I am sorry that your name became connected with the affair, and I am sorrier that my own did. I have been persecuted about those papers, and I know nothing about them." "Will you please tell me," said Barbara, "how your name became connected with them?" "I do not know, except that I called several times at Mr. Scudamore's office regarding work." "Did you know anyone else in the office?" "No," came the answer quickly. A little too quickly, Barbara thought. Still, she seemed unlikely to learn anything from this source. "I think you do," she said. The girl swept to her feet in indignation. "You can do it well," said Barbara. The other turned white, but kept her lips firmly closed. "I beg your pardon," and Barbara caught her hand winningly and pulled her back into her chair, "for being so hard on you. And yet I know you can help me, and I beg you to believe me. It is vital." She stopped, and the other, looking in her eyes, knew that she meant what she had said. Still, she did not relent. "Have you had no troubles yourself?" Barbara went on. "I know you have had. It is in your face. You, too, have suffered, I believe, on this very account. Tell me, won't you? If you will do that, no way in which I can help you will be enough." Barbara laid her hand over the other's. "Oh, be good to me," she cried. "It means everything." And then, as she saw no sign, she bowed her head over their joined hands and burst into a storm of weeping. And then the other perceived that Barbara, with all her courage, was but a girl, not stiffened and hardened by years of adventure and adversity like herself, and at last her eyes softened. With a touch of sympathy, she put her other hand on the bowed head. They were now simply two women together. "Does it mean so much, dear?" she said. "Everything," sobbed Barbara. "I thought I could go without happiness, but I cannot." "I think I see," said the other slowly. "But I have lost my own life's happiness, and have had to bear it." Barbara clasped more tightly the hand she held. "You poor, dear girl! Is there anything? Can I—" The other shook her head, then said, "Do you know I used to hate you?" "Hate me!" exclaimed Barbara, astonished. "Yes. I first noticed you with the other girls the last year, I suppose, that you were at school. You were charmingly dressed, laughing, happy, and I was miserable. I found out who you were, and then you went into society. I read in the paper of your debut, your triumphs, and I thought how I could have equaled them if I had been born in your position. I hated you, and when you were brought into this affair, for I suspected it was you, I was glad. When you didn't have the courage to come forward, I despised you. I knew where you were last summer. Then came your acknowledgment. I think I understand." Barbara flushed, but only said, "Please do not hate me now. Remember, it was not my fault. I never injured you. Tell me, why were you so unhappy?" "We, my brother and I, were born in Spain, but my father was an American. My father was a man of position here, but he was dissipated, a brute, and dragged us down. He ill-treated my mother, my dear, beautiful mother. My brother, you would never have known there was a drop of Spanish blood in him, was named after and resembled father, and hated him for it. He was chivalrous, and, as I did, adored Mama. He was sensitive, high-strung, and the rough schoolboys persecuted him. I tried to show him that it was so everywhere, that those who are rough and uncouth do not understand those who are fine. But he would not see. He came to hate the very name of America. And then Mama died, and our father went away and left us to care for ourselves. My brother got a clerkship in the War Department, and then came the long disagreement between the countries that led to war. My brother did not dare let them see how he felt, for we had to live, but he had to hear all the talk against the land he idolized, though he remembered little of it, and was wrong. And then he took the plans. Barbara held her breath. I did not know it, the girl went on. I do not know how he ever got them. He was only a minor clerk, and they never suspected him. When I went to Mr. Scudamore for work, I did not see my brother, for he was in another office, and no one knew the relationship. One morning he did not come downstairs. His bed had not been slept in. There was a letter telling me everything, and telling me, too, that he had gone south and had joined the Spanish Secret Service. He left me a considerable sum, all he had. A comrade afterward told me that he served under Mother's family name, that he would bear my father's no longer. He was captured, the girl broke down, and shot as a spy. Barbara held the sobbing girl and rocked to and fro. And you have borne all this, she said, and have told me so, that I might be happy. Oh, you are good, good, and you shall be happy again, too. No, no, you shall be, said Barbara. I always have my own way, and I shall have it in this, too. You shall see, you dear girl. The other rose slowly and left the room. In a few moments she returned. It is my brother's letter. Give it to Mr. Scudamore. He will know how to use it. But ask him to arrange with the secretary that the name need never be known. I think it has been remarked that no mere man may fathom a woman's moods. The phrase has a familiar ring. During his acquaintance with Barbara, Sidney Scudamore felt that he had experienced the truth of this axiom as often as was comfortable. But tonight his bewilderment was complete. She circled around him like a bird. She tormented and teased. She was dazzling and altogether charming. The truth was, as you will realize if you think of it, that for the first time he had met the carefree Barbara. Her talk rippled on, and her lightness lifted Sidney out of the dark mood which had become too habitual of late, into a happiness he felt would be permanent, could he but possess the cause of it. Now, she said, he looks like a proper man, and less like an owl. His big eyes are no longer sad. She stood tantalizingly before him, balancing herself upon her toes. His hands went lovingly to her shoulders. Barbara, he said, you're a witch, and the dearest witch. Yes, I'm just that, Sidney. Look at this. Wonderingly, he took the letter from her hand, read a few lines, and again, wonderingly, looked at her. What is it? He asked. Go on. Read it all. His face grew white as he took in the story. Then, as the last of the load he had borne for months dropped away, he raised his eyes to hers. The paper slipped from his fingers and fluttered to the floor. Then, but now, I think, this tale is told. End of Section 3. Read by Scarlett Kavanaugh, North Carolina, April 4th, 2026.